Good morning. My name is Lynn Leach, and I am so pleased to join you on this snowy, wintry morning to show you how to do your outdoor planters up for Christmas or up for the holidays. A few of you may still have your mums in there from fall. I went to see a customer last week and they still, believe it or not, had geraniums in their planters. And it's been a lovely fall, and so things have lasted. But with December 1st approaching quickly and the cold, snowy weather here, this is such an easy project for almost anybody to tackle. To get the outside of your house looking beautiful for the holidays. So I want to talk first about pots. And you can certainly use the pot that you've had sitting out at your front door. I would encourage people to not empty them out. Instead, if you've got a mum in there, you can cut it off just at the ground, leave that soil in there because it gives you something to stick your greens into. If you're ahead of the game, and you've dumped out all that soil, you're going to simply want to fill that with some good quality potting soil. Make sure it's moist because it will help keep your greens a little fresher. Or you can put them in, put it outside, and then give it a good drink to kind of just freshen things up. So I've just got this. This did have a mum in it, so it's just a used plastic pot. And this could be just set out as is, or you could even use it as an insert and tuck it inside if you have a big urn or a big planter that you can't move in and out. You can just drop that whole thing just down inside your urn. It's sort of a nice way when you're looking ahead at redoing things for spring, for you to simply lift out the winter instead of waiting for the pot to thaw. So I've got a great amount of materials here, and we've done some of these workshops. For the outdoor planter, I'm going to introduce you to some of the new materials. And hopefully greens that you can go outside to your yard or call up a friend and go for a walk, take your handy dandy clippers and hide them in your coat pocket and do a little trimming. And so I am going to talk about some of the ones you can collect and then also some of the ones that you can purchase and where you can find those. So first of all, I think when you're designing your pots, and I'm going to give you guidelines, I'm going to tell you, this is a project that there are no hard and fast rules. And I want to encourage you to do what you think looks beautiful, that suits your taste and suits your style, that is aesthetically pleasing at the front of your house. So again, just guidelines, but for the first one, you may want to roughly follow them. So I generally, for the center of my planter, look for something tall. And you can do this a few different ways. All the rage right now is birch logs. So you can pop in a couple of birch logs, depending on how big your planter is. As a general rule, for height, I like to go about 2 or 3 times the height of your container with your hut. So I've got these beautiful dogwood branches, which a lot of people have dogwood. I'm going to turn that, or I'm going to get it in the eye. A lot of people have dogwood in their gardens outside, or if you go for a walk, it grows along the roadside, in ditches, generally in wet areas. And you can tell dogwood by its beautiful, beautiful red bark. So that's one of the branches. Like I say, I've seen people use birch. Darlene sent me a beautiful photo, I think last year or the year before, and she had used hydrangeas. So again, go out and see what you got available. I did a workshop this week, and there was a lady there raving about using teasel, which is very, very sharp and kind of tricky to work with, but it's free, it's plentiful and textural, and it has a little bit of height. The other thing that you can do is, if you like bling, you can get all sorts of things at the florist, at the garden center, or even at the grocery stores now that are sparkly, that are tall, that, I don't even know what to call them. I call them doodads, so I don't think that's the technical term. But basically tall, sparkly stems that you can add in to give you that height. Again, it comes down to personal taste. I'm always a natural girl, and I'm always about the added benefit of going for the walk to get the materials. So you're just going to put in a few there. And again, this one's roughly, I'm going to say 2.5 to 3 times the height of the container, which is about, it's easy on the eye, that proportion. So then we're going to look at greens. And I'm very particular with greens. When I'm doing something for indoor, I know that we've done a session on centerpieces. And I'm very particular with wreaths, because I'm really looking for greens that smell good, that hold their needles really well. But when your project is outside, you can sort of broaden the greens that you use. So I've got a few different ones here today. Spruce is one of those ones that I think is really plentiful. Many, many people have a spruce tree in their neighborhood that they could clip from, maybe in your yard. I find it's very prickly to work with. I don't particularly love the smell of it. And it does, if you use it in a wreath, that has a tendency to drop its needles. In an outdoor planter, it's absolutely perfect. And so I generally like to use something like this. You can see it's got really nice natural shape. And the first thing that I like to do is sort of cover the edge of the container. So I start right at the bottom. And when I'm putting these ones in, I'm putting them in almost straight across. I'm going into the soil, but I'm kind of going straight across so that it has the ability to sort of cover the edge of the container. And you don't have to put a lot of them in, because we're going to layer and layer and layer. But you just basically go around the bottom of your container and shove those in. You want to make sure that you put them in far enough that once that soil freezes, it keeps them in there no matter what kind of gale force wind we get. Okay, first layer done. And then that's a beautiful use of the spruce. Again, you can kind of gauge how big your container is, how wide you're going to go. If it's right at the front door, I generally go a little narrower, simply so that people can get by without brushing up against it. So another green that I very rarely use, simply because it's really, really prickly. And again, I don't love the smell of it indoors or for projects like a wreath. However, in an outdoor planter, if you've got them, lots and lots of people have junipers. And junipers are one of those ones that you can cut lots off of without anybody knowing. So go into the backyard, they've got a lovely, very fine texture. So very pretty mixed in. And so for the next kind of go around, what I'm doing now, instead of putting them in almost straight, I'm kind of putting them in at a 45-degree angle. And this is going to start to shape the size and scale of your planter. And so I generally aim towards the bottom of the middle of the container. And I'm going in sort of at a 45-degree angle. And I look at the piece that I'm sliding in there. And I look at the natural shape of it. So a piece like this, you can see that natural bow is down. I really like the look of that in the planter going down. I feel like if you put it in the other way, it starts to get a little awkward and starts to sort of cup up. We're always trying to simulate how things grow naturally. And when you look at a spruce tree or a juniper, that is the way they grow, sort of out and over. And so you just want to try to simulate that. So we've got some juniper in there. Another green that I use a lot of, because I love how dark green it is, and I think it's really common green for people to just go out into the backyard and do some trimming, is yew. So Y-E-W, yew, not as you and me. But you can get English yew or Japanese yew. And what I love about it is it's very fluffy and full. You don't have to jam your planter completely full, but you do certainly want to hide the soil. And yew is your friend here, because you can jam it in. And I generally, I'm just going to cut it down just a little bit. And these ones, you can see that they don't have much shape. They're very upright. I cut those kind of low, and I go right in at the center, and I go straight down in. And what that does is it provides a little bit of a base where you've put your stems in, so that when you look, you don't see soil, you just see that lovely green color. And it starts to end up looking really generous, really full. It's amazing because really I've done very little here and taken very little time, and it's already starting to kind of come along. Or I think it is. You have to tell me because I can't see. So let's go into some other materials that you can easily collect. Ontario cedar. So Ontario cedar, it depends on our growing season, the quality of Ontario cedar. This year, it's spectacular because we had a good wet season. And in addition to that, it's what they call a mast year. So a mast year is a year where trees basically produce an extraordinary amount of seed. And it happens every 3 or 4 seasons, and this is one of them. And so because of that, the cedar, the fir, the spruce are loaded with pine cones. I don't know whether anybody has noticed that or not. Great year to collect cones. But because of that, this beautiful Ontario cedar has great green color, but it already has the cones attached to it. And I always think Mother Nature does a better job of attaching cones than we do. And it's lovely if they're already there and it's a pretty little detail. So when I find a piece like that, I make sure that it's at the front so that everybody can sort of see those cones. And again, sort of going in on that 45-degree angle towards the center of the planter, using it as the showpiece it should be. Nothing smells as good as cedar. And again, this is a green that I think if you go for a walk, most people can find. Maybe you have a cedar hedge. Maybe your neighbor has a cedar hedge and wants to join you out there for a little clipping session and a bit of gossip. You know, it's just an easy one to actually find. If cedar's all you've got available to you, there's no reason why you can't do the whole container in cedar. I like the mixture of greens because it gives you some different green color and different textures, but there's no reason why, if you just have access to 1 or 2 things, that you can't just go for it. So one of the other greens that is very plentiful is Ontario pine. And again, it's beautiful this year. Some years it does take on sort of a yellowy browny hue if we don't get enough moisture. But again, a beautiful growing season. I love white pine because I think it's soft. It adds a really pretty, delicate texture to your planters. And again, it's got that great shape. So I'm putting that in. It adds another layer of sort of covering the edge of your planter. Now, there is one backdrop to the Ontario pine. I always use it, but it comes with a warning because it is extremely sappy, particularly this year. So you are going to become a mess working with it. Hand sanitizer takes it right off, the alcohol in it, or olive oil, and then some good salt, soap and water will cut that sap. But just a few pieces of that to add a little bit of texture. Again, because it's sort of willowy and sort of that fine texture, you can get away with putting some bigger pieces in. And I love the way the snow lays on it. So again, we're kind of coming right along here. You know you're getting close to accessorizing when you're having difficulty finding a spot to put your greens in. Can you overdo it? Of course you can. I think that's maybe the hardest thing of craft is knowing when you're done. But we are almost there. I've got a couple other greens to introduce to you, and then we're going to get into the fun stuff, which is the accessories. So I've got 2 greens here that I don't think you'll find growing in your neighborhood, but are certainly plentiful and often sold nurseries, garden centers, florists in bunches around Christmas. And the first one is Douglas fir. I love to use some sort of fir. The smell is extraordinary. If you were to bottle Christmas, the smell of Christmas, it would be fir. It's just a lovely, lovely green to work with. I love that it's sort of silvery, and certainly some of the noble fir or the balsam fir, if you flip it over, it's almost white on the back. Beautiful, beautiful coloration. And for that reason, I like to actually use it upside down so that you see that variation in color. Now, you can buy it at the florist. What I also do, we do a real Christmas tree still. And you know, when you're getting it ready to go in the stand, you take the couple of boughs off the bottom. And again, people often use a Fraser fir. We usually get a balsam fir, and I don't throw those. I don't throw those boughs away. I definitely would use them in a swag or in a planter like this. Waste not, want not, especially with greenery. So again, I'm just going to put those guys in, and it's coming along. All the different textures, all the different colors. It really isn't. This is probably the easiest of the greens projects. So if you've tackled the wreath already, and you've tackled, what else did we do? The centerpiece. This is going to be really easy for you. So the last green that I want to talk about is another one that you would purchase, and it is BC cedar. And I often use this one simply because Ontario cedar some years is not great. And so it's generally on my order and on my roster. I love the way that BC cedar is shaped. So it's sort of like a high class cedar. I think it's got, it's a finer texture than the Ontario cedar, and it's a softer fall, what they would call the fall, so the shape of it. So when you look at a professional florist, when they're doing their work, they will often use BC cedar. So I like to grab one bunch of it and put a few little pieces in, because it ends up making your project look really professional. Now I have found over the years, the cost of greens, as this is sort of stuff has become popular, the cost of the greens has certainly gone up. And so again, I encourage you, and again, I'm going to use Darlene as the example, since she talked about it at the beginning of the meeting, you know, where she had a friend come over, you go for a walk, you collect what you can, maybe you each purchase, maybe you purchase the BC cedar bunch and your friend purchases the fir bunch, and then you divide them up and you split them so you get a little few pieces of each. This is such a great thing to do with friends. Put on some Christmas music, you know, and do a little bit of this together. Then you also get their good feedback on what they think. It's nice sometimes to have that sort of thing, especially if it's your first time. So that's basically it for the greenery. And don't worry about it being perfect. Again, this is all natural materials. All the pieces are different. Forgive yourself if it looks a little wild. Generally, you get it out there and in place, and it's spectacular. So yeah, don't worry about it being perfect. Mother Nature's not, and that's part of why she's so beautiful. So some of the goodies that you can put in, I did talk about cones. So white pine cones are very, very plentiful this year. Spruce cones, very, very plentiful. And this is something that if you're in a windy location, you really should wire into place. I'm going to quickly show you how to do that. You can also buy them on a stem already. So again, go to the florist or the grocery store and they have them already put onto a stick that you can just slide into place. But if you're really just going and collecting, basically you're going to take your cone and you're going to take a little piece of paddle wire. So just a flexible florist wire. You can get that at Michael's, any craft shop. And you're going to take that wire and you're going to wrap it around the bottom scales of your pine cone and just give it a little twist. That gives you a wire to then wire to one of your stems to help hold it into place if you're in a really windy location. If you're not in a windy location, you can just sort of tuck them into place where you like them. Now, if your arrangement is big, you can find these massive cones. My sweet mother, and I'm not going to share her name because she'll probably get arrested, smuggles these home from Florida for me in her golf bag. Sorry, Mom, giving you up. I'll bail you out when you go to jail. So anyway, they are available down in the south. You're really not supposed to move natural materials back and forth. They do ship them here all the time. You can buy bags of them. And I think these are from a longleaf pine, but beautiful giant cones that, again, you can buy them on a stick already. You can buy them sugared. And they can just be tucked into place. And they're beautiful. It's just a really simple and natural way to sort of spruce up your container. One more natural material here to look at. Everybody loves berries, and I think it's difficult to find berries that will work in certain situations, that will stand up and last throughout the season. So I want to talk to you about these, which are a deciduous holly, and it's a native to Canada, and definitely a plant that you should consider using in your garden. Now, just like the evergreen holly that you think of at Christmas time, you need a male and a female to produce the beautiful berries. But what I love about these berries is that they really stay really well through the season. They do drop a little bit. I've never used them on indoor projects because they drop all over the place. But in an outdoor planter, they stay on the branch really nice. You may have to sweep up a few, but they give just this beautiful pop of color. Now, they grow in very, very swampy locations. So take your rubber boots if you're going for a walk and you see some. Or like I say, if you've got a wet area in your garden and you're struggling to find something that's going to tolerate those conditions, this is a great plant. So deciduous holly. And again, you need the male and the female. They've got some funny names. I think there's Mary Poppins and Jim Dandy, and there are a couple. But anyway, it's kind of fun when you go to the garden center and you see what they've done to market some of these shrubs. So by just adding a few berries, all of a sudden you're starting to get some really pretty color in there. Some of the other berries that I like to use, rose hips. So if you've got roses in the garden, or again, wild roses, if you go for a walk, they stand out against the landscape right now, particularly on a snowy day. You'll see that bright red in the ditch. And I'm one of those gals that drives around with a pair of these in my glove box. And if I see some down in the ditch, I'll steal a few. I guess I'll be in jail with my mother. I don't think you'll ever get waylaid if you're down in the ditch. Most people are okay with you clipping a few things that they would consider weeds. So those are, I think, are the best berries. If you know that you're not going to be traveling around and cutting these, or you don't have access to them in the yard, there is absolutely no reason why you can't add some of the artificial accessories that are available. So you can get all sorts of different berries that are artificial, and you could use them year after year. And usually they're just on stems and you can slide them in. You can get apples. So these are different things that I've used for various customers and clients. And again, what I find is if you've used all real greens and real branches, a few little artificial things actually don't look out of place at all. So you could slide some of those in just for a little bit of color. And you can have fun and change it out every season. The other one that I love to use is sumac. And I don't know whether any of you have sumac on your property, or again, it's very plentiful along the roadside. If you can't locate it, you can actually get artificial sumac. So this is something else that you can buy at the florist. I've had these down in my basement, and I pull them out every 3 or 4 years if I'm looking for something just a little bit different to add in. Just a little pizzazz of color. And then at the end of the season, you pull them out, you tuck them away, and you can use them year after year. So again, just adds a little something else. The last thing that I think, depending on how busy you want things to be, how colorful you want things to be, you could add some of these, all of these, just depends on your style. And this is, I think, the beauty of a project like this is everyone, I think, when you get to this point, should be confident enough to do what you like. So, you know, choose accessories that speak to you, put as much or as little in as you like, be as sparkly or as natural as suits you and your property. But I find the one big thing that people really love to see in these is a big bow. And if you find good ribbon and you've got a good friend that can make bows, have her make one for you. I'm usually on call in my family. Everyone comes by with their spool of ribbon that they've bought, and we sit and we have a little visit, and I get busy hands and just make my bows. If you know you can't make a bow, you can go into a place like Walter's Garden Center or Michael's, and they have pre-made bows. And again, that's something that you could use each season if you pull it out and save it, or if you want to switch out your ribbon every year, you can do that as well. And really, that's all there is to it. That could go right outside into the urn. Like I say, I usually like to give it a really good drink to keep the greens as fresh as possible. That will freeze all in there, and so that when you get a good winter storm, it's all sort of frozen and tucked in. The only other thing, I think, just to kind of finalize, lights are a big deal right now. And you can get the sweetest little sets of solar lights. So you don't even have to worry about cords if your urn is out a little bit. And you could very easily tuck in a few little lights if you wanted that lit at night. Let's say you're having an evening party. Might be nice to have a little bit of light at the front door. So that's the end of the demonstration. I'm excited to hear your questions and actually maybe hear from you as to maybe natural materials that you found in your own garden or out walking around the countryside that maybe I haven't mentioned that hopefully we can learn from. So thank you so much. Merry Christmas.